Joining us by phone tonight is Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat who represents Brooklyn and Queens. Congressman, thank you so much for your time tonight. In general, does Congress take it personally when a president issues an executive action?
Well, there's always some tension between the executive actions taken by a president and the legislative prerogatives of the Congress. But in this particular instance, these are steps that are very modest in nature, that the president is well within his authority to take. And more significantly, these are actions that are necessary to try and protect Americans from the epidemic of gun violence that has occurred. Congress has abdicated its responsibility to act responsibly to deal with gun safety legislation in America, and that's why the president rightfully declared enough is enough, and he stepped forward to do everything possible within his authority to make a difference.
Why? The president acknowledged the issue of gun control is so polarizing in Washington that this Congress won't reach an agreement on any legislation. So why? Why can't both sides agree on a compromise that protects the interests of law-abiding gun owners as well as the interests of concerned citizens?
That's a vexing question, and during my 3+ years in Congress, I've been struggling to figure out why so many of my colleagues, particularly on the Republican side of the aisle, continue to function as wholly owned subsidiaries of the National Rifle Association rather than doing what's in the best interest of the people that they represent. Gun violence, John, is not a partisan issue. It occurs in blue states and red states. It affects Democrats and Republicans. And just the mass shooting incidents that took place over the last year, Lafayette, Louisiana, Roanoke, Virginia, out in Oregon, in California, and a variety of different places, that affects all Americans. And so it's been problematic that so many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have refused to step forward and do common sense things that everyday Americans support, including, John, most NRA members, such as comprehensive background checks, which is why it was important that the president step forward to deal with that issue, to close the gun show and internet loophole in a way that hopefully will save the lives of many Americans moving forward.
Yeah, let's talk about those background checks a little bit more. Why should they be conducted for all sales, not just those at registered licensed gun dealers, but all transactions? Make the case. What would you say to those who are going to call this program perhaps and say that that's too much government?
Well, what we should be concerned about is the act of selling a gun, and that gun potentially finding its way into the hands of a violent criminal or someone who intends to do harm to either a loved one, a spouse, a stranger, in a mass shooting context. The location of the sale really shouldn't matter. If it's sold in a gun store, there's a comprehensive background check process that is currently in place. And I think the president is correct to direct the ATF to make it clear that if guns are also sold over the internet, as well as sold at gun shows, and someone is engaged in the regular business of selling these guns, which in many instances are weapons of mass destruction, that there should at least be a comprehensive background check in place, similar to that which exists at the more traditional gun stores. You know, John, we've got 5% of the world's population here in the United States, but 50% of the world's guns. That means that we've got more than 285 million guns in circulation. And no law enforcement entity can tell you with any degree of certainty where those guns are or how we can prevent those guns from falling into the hands of criminals. And that's why comprehensive background checks is just a modest, reasonable thing that we can do to try and keep Americans safe.
And we'll find out in a minute what our fellow New Yorkers think about these proposals. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, thanks so much for joining us tonight and having the first word.